Well, my friends, this is an issue that I've been thinking a lot about lately. By all accounts, it seems like Google has aggressively closed the technology gap between itself and OpenAI to the point where many are speculating if we're starting to see the beginning of the end of this massive AI race. For the last few years, the narrative has always been how OpenAI is the benchmark to beat. They had the first mover's advantage and was a cultural juggernaut that was too big to fail. But as we start heading into 2026, I think we need to start reframing our thinking because that narrative is pretty much dead. There's been a lot of big stories in the news as of late, and the common trend I'm seeing is Google, OpenAI's biggest competitor, is doing a lot more than just catching up. They're starting to clearly solidify their long-term dominance, setting up systems that will become strong assets in the near future, and is arguably pulling ahead in many areas that OpenAI will have a really difficult time dealing with. Google's dominance is actually kind of scary if you think about it, which I think is making OpenAI very worried, very desperate, and a little bit unsure of the future, to the point where 2026 is probably going to be their most important year yet, for better or for worse. The reason I even wrote this video in the first place was to do a quick announcement piece on Gemini 3 Flash. It was recently released as Google's fastest, cheapest model alongside some new features, but the longer that I thought about this new release, the more I realized how much a problem this is going to be for OpenAI's business model. Because if you compare Google's cheapest, fastest model, Gemini 3 Flash, against OpenAI's latest top-tier flagship GPT 5.2 model, both were released within weeks of each other, by the way, you will see it's actually kind of embarrassing. If you look at the benchmarks that Google provided, mind you, I am massively oversimplifying here, their Gemini 3 Flash model scores 30% higher in accuracy, it's 2% better at multimodal reasoning, which is its understanding of mixed media tasks. Gemini 3 Flash can process video as a native temporal stream, meaning it can understand timing, movement, and pacing, while OpenAI's model relies on sampling static frames. It also supports up to a 1 million token context window compared to around 400,000 token on GPT 5.2, so Google can, at least on paper, accept longer prompts, plus so much more. And sure, some of those percentage points and minor features might not mean much to you, but the most important part of Gemini 3 Flash is it's significantly cheaper for 99% of the benefits compared to the flagship GPT 5.2 model. So even though GPT 5.2 is technically smarter, in the business world, that 2% intelligence is not going to be worth it if you have to spend 2 to 3 times more to get it. For a lot of people, Gemini 3.0 Flash is, simply put, more than enough, as Google has effectively made what they call PhD level intelligence incredibly affordable for developers, to the point where it doesn't really make sense for them to use anything else. And the reason why Google can do this while OpenAI can't is because of the infrastructure. Google owns the TPU chips that the AI runs on, they own the data centers, they own a majority of this pipeline here. Meanwhile, OpenAI has to pay Microsoft and Nvidia and all of its associated partners a premium for that computing power. And at the same time, while Google is saving money and is able to move faster in that regard, they can also afford to dump millions into experimental research and lower prices just to suffocate the competition, simply because they have the means to. This actually leads to the biggest structural disadvantage that OpenAI has to deal with: diversity within its assets. ChatGPT is a great product, don't get me wrong. It's achieved massive cultural relevance within such a short period of time, something like 800 million active weekly users, but aside from adding new features on the consumer side, it doesn't really have a clear direction on where it should be going. They don't really have an easy way to gain new consumers outside of the big headlining articles or word of mouth, like with what we saw with every new Sora release or that Studio Ghibli type of filter that was blowing up on the internet a while back. But any real long-term sustainable products OpenAI is looking for needs to be built from scratch. Like this hardware device that they're trying to build with Johnny Ive that's supposed to have no screen, just cameras and a microphone. Sounds interesting. Or this Atlas browser that they released a few months back. It's a great product, honestly, but why use that if you're already well settled into Brave browser, Chrome, or Firefox? Google, on the other hand, doesn't really have to get users to do anything. They have YouTube already, which is helping them train their models models and add new AI features. They have Chrome for web data and, again, to implement its new Gemini models. They have Android with almost 4 billion active devices that they can shove Gemini into, an incredibly easy way to increase your user base compared to OpenAI. And with the AI tech in general, Google seems to be way ahead of the game here too, especially when you look at the next frontier or the next logical evolution. While these AI chatbots are great and all, the Geminis, Perplexities, ChatGPT apps of the world, they're all good at getting information for you or generating things on your behalf. But the next big step moving into 2026 and onward is going to be having AI do things on your behalf, otherwise known as Agentic AI. It's something that Google has already been implementing and talking about for quite a while now. That's why we saw the release of Magic Q on the Pixel 10, but more importantly, that is why we saw the release of Google Anti-Gravity a few weeks back. It's an AI-first development platform that lets you manage different AI agents, assign them with different tasks, and keep track of the work they've completed. And OpenAI doesn't really have something like that. Alongside the fact that Gemini 3 Flash is the perfect model to start off the upcoming 2026 year with, especially as Agentic AI becomes more popular. When you have AI doing something for you, like scrubbing the web for promo codes, for example, for it to be a truly positive customer experience, the model you're using needs to be incredibly fast, it needs to be smart, accurate, produce high quality results, but also needs to be affordable. That way, the price of whatever this supposed service might be in the future can be cheaper at the consumer level. So instead of the customer having to pay $20 per month for the service, if they maybe use GPT 5.2, maybe they can charge $10 a month instead using Gemini 3 Flash, which is significantly cheaper. And all of this is exactly what Gemini 3 Flash is for, and it makes sense why developers would be drawn to it for their upcoming projects. And if you want more insight into the amount of pressure OpenAI must be feeling, just look at how they're spending their time and money. Google, for as much as they're shoving AI into everything they possibly can, are focused on boring, sustainable, profitable implementations like making Android smarter, making Google search better, and improving their Google services. Gemini is becoming so good of an assistant, in fact, that even Apple is conceding to Google for a Siri partnership. Keep in mind Apple's insane standards for quality, so that's really saying something. Not to mention, Google is building their own AI-focused tensor chips so that they don't have to rely on NVIDIA as much, which will no doubt be very useful for them in the future, plus so much more. OpenAI, on the other hand, seems to be pivoting into a significantly different direction, trying to make their products and services get a lot of attention, but not really push the technological boundaries. With Sora 2, we saw the implementation of some kind of social media element, like TikTok, but with AI-generated content. We saw that massive deal with Disney to license characters for Sora to create content for Disney Plus, with characters from Star Wars, Marvel, their Disney Princesses IP, and more. There are credible rumors that OpenAI is exploring an adult mode for 2026 to help users create erotica and have more quote-unquote freedom in the app. As I mentioned earlier, there is apparently some kind of hardware collaboration in the works with legendary designer Johnny Ive. We'll have to see how that plays out. Recently, OpenAI mentioned a $1 trillion infrastructure plan for custom silicon designs, cloud infrastructure, NVIDIA GPUs, and more, which is shocking for a headline, while also seemingly highly controversial among some critics. And all of this just seems like they're trying to keep the interest alive with hype and big talks instead of actual technological breakthroughs. Before we get out of here, I want to leave you with this. I know I'm making a lot of claims and assumptions out of this video, so instead of taking it from me, I beg you to check out these two podcasts that were released within days of each other. One is with Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, with Alex Kantrowitz, and the other is with the CEO of Google DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, with Professor Hannah Fry. Both were published within the week of December 15th, 2025. Listen to just 5 minutes of both of these podcasts, and you can easily tell the difference in tone is night and day between these two CEOs. To me, Sam sounds very hard to listen to, especially knowing how much pressure OpenAI is under. He's always using these long, loose analogies, indirectly answering questions. When he was asked about how OpenAI spending will eventually align with the revenue, around the 37-minute mark if you want to check it out for yourself, Altman basically says he's gonna spend more on computing and it will all work itself out eventually. To me, it just came off as a complete non-answer, to the point where even the host had to round it out at the end with some kind of actual substance. Then listen to Demis Hassabis on his podcast By Comparison. It's completely completely different. He sounds enthusiastic, excited, confident about what he's working on. He talks about solving science, curing diseases, and the long-term vision he has for AI to actually benefit people. He's clearly explaining what his thoughts are on the future, never skipping a beat when it comes to sharing his expertise. In the podcast, around the 49-minute mark, he says he's basically doing everything he's ever dreamed of, being at the frontier of science. Just listening to him talk for 5 minutes, I can tell this guy has no interest in making internet AI slop or making robot AI girlfriends or anything like that that diminishes all the hard work he's doing. He is a true professional, and I encourage you to do a bit of research on him when you get the chance. While I was researching this entire video, I saw a comment that sums everything up perfectly. Sam Altman is a salesman, and Demis Hassabis is a visionary. And while I don't know if I can subscribe to the salesman comment completely, I do totally understand where people are coming from. I think many are just expecting a lot more from OpenAI, and looking at the long term on an objective level with Google's crazy good pricing, their infrastructure, the leadership that they have taking charge, I truly think Google has taken the lead in a way that is impossible to take back. But hey, those are just my thoughts on the subject. Obviously, 2026 has a lot in store, so we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. Regardless, I really think it was helpful giving you guys a high-level look on the situation. With all that said, I'm gonna leave it over to you guys now. What do you think on the future of AI? Do you think OpenAI has a big problem for it on its hands, or is there some possible way they might come back later on in the next few years and retake control of this AI dominance era? Please let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below, but until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd from 9 to 5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.